Hello and welcome to the Supernatural track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Martin, and tonight we're going to be talking about our favorite Dean-centric episodes. So before we get started, let me introduce our wonderful panelists, starting with Lynn.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lynn Zubernis. I'm a clinical psychologist and a professor at Westchester University, and one of my main research areas is studying fandom, and my favorite television show of all time is Supernatural. So I've written a lot of books on Supernatural fandom, and I've written 2 books with the cast of Supernatural and their thoughts about the show and the fandom. One of them is Family Don't End with Blood. Jensen and Jared and Misha signed on the front of it. How rude, so you can't see it well. And another is There'll Be Peace When You Are Done.
Okay, Carole.
Hi, I'm Carole Stokes. I started watching Supernatural in season 3. I watched it to the end. In 2012, I started writing fanfic for it, and which is still up there on AO3. And I am now also known as Ellis Colton, an MM romance writer.
Okay, Elektra.
I'm Elektra Hammond. I'm a writer and an editor. I started watching Supernatural from that very first episode when it aired, and I kept watching until that last episode just made me cry.
Anne.
Hi, I'm Ann Wicker, and I too am a writer and editor and a former journalist. And I came late to the Supernatural universe, but I went completely down the rabbit hole and have watched all the seasons numerous times at this point, and just thoroughly enjoy the conventions and these panels talking about our favorite show.
And I'm Gail Martin and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic and urban fantasy. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance. All of my modern day characters, Sam and Dean, could walk into their worlds and be right at home. I fell in love with the show halfway through season 11, binge watched 11 seasons in time for the start of season 12, fell completely down the rabbit hole, and so here we are. So let's talk about our favorite Dean-centric episodes. And that, there are 327 episodes, Dean's in all of them. So, that there's a lot of territory to cover here. I'm going to start with Anne this time. Let's everybody just give us one fairly briefly so we can get around as many times as possible.
Well, I have to say that my very favorite Dean-centric episode is regarding Dean, where he's losing his memory. It's season 12, episode 11, and he is hexed by a witch and is losing his memory. And why he did not win an Emmy for that performance alone, I'll never know. I mean, there's this one scene, if you've never seen the show, where he is looking in the mirror and the look of terror on his face is just amazing. And as somebody who, my mother had dementia, not Alzheimer's, but a different form of dementia, but loss of memory is scary, very, very scary. And it just really, Rowena has a really great little part in this one too. I have to, Dean calls her hair. She said, "Your hair's so bouncy." I just loved that.
Can't we keep him this way?
Yeah, can't we keep him this way? So, yeah. So, and he forgets everything, but he remembers Sam.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Elektra.
Have you thought about God's plan for you?
Too much, buddy. Too many times.
My favorite Dean-centric episode is the end, wherein a sidewalk preacher asks him that. I wasn't really asking all of you that, although you maybe want to think about it. At least partly because he travels to a future, and he plays 2 different versions of himself, the current version and 5 years in the future. And we get to see two different versions of Dean talking to each other. And it's a fantastic performance. It's what might have been, what is, how they differ. You see the decision points, and it's just a great overall episode, made greater by the performance.
Okay. Carol?
So Elektra almost said the name of the episode that I'm going to mention. What is and what will never be. Dean is sent into, I guess, almost like an alternate universe, almost like a pocket universe, because it's not a universe that actually exists, by a djinn, and finds himself being an ordinary guy, and his mom's alive, and his dad, died of natural causes, not being, killed by a demon. And he gets to mow his mom's lawn, and she makes him a sandwich, and he has a hot girlfriend, and everything is just really peachy. And we see Dean like catch his breath and just kind of revel in all of this stress-free, angst-free life. And we're not even talking, I mean, this is an early season, so we're not even talking about the stress and angst he gets like in season 14. Nonetheless, he finds out that because he is an ordinary guy, all the people they had saved, people from the plane crash, all these people they had saved are not saved and have died. And he can't take paying that price. And the other thing is, Sam is also all ordinary. And yay, Jessica's alive and Sam's in college, but they're not close. They don't have a relationship. He apparently stole everything, including Sam's prom date. So they don't have a good relationship. And that is also a price he's not happy to pay. So in the end, as painful and difficult as his actual life is, nonetheless, that's the life he chooses. And to watch Jensen go through the performance of playing this happy, easygoing Dean, and then face the costs and realize he can't do that. He doesn't have the right to say, my life is going to be peachy, but y'all have to pay the price for me, you know. And we learned so much about Dean's moral integrity and what he really stands for. He's not just someone who's out drinking and boozing it up and, sleeping with hot women in bars and stuff. He's got a really solid and pure central core. And we see that come into play, and we see how much he values his relationship with his brother. So both for what we learn about Dean's character itself, and for the performance that Jensen gives us with that, it's just a remarkable episode.
Okay. Lynn?
Well, I had all of those on my list, so I totally
Me
agree with those
too.
three. Yeah. I'm sure we all probably have. It'll be really funny if we all have like the same 15 or dozen episodes or something. Um, I'm going to pick Swan Song, which maybe you don't think of right off the bat as a Dean-centric episode like those three, but Swan Song is just quintessential Dean Winchester to me. It is Dean refusing to give up on Sam no matter what, which is a theme that just characterizes Dean Winchester from the pilot episode all the way through to the finale. His, well, I ain't gonna let him die alone. It's just, I mean, that is Dean Winchester. And you really see Dean's anguish about allowing Sam to go do this horrible suicidal sacrificial thing, and how much he doesn't want Sam to do it, and how hard it is for him to go along with it. But then you also see his incredible bravery in, if he's going to do this, I'm going to be right there with him. And there's this moment when he's driving up to the farm in the Impala, and the music is playing and comes past the fence. And I think when I saw it the first time, I literally stood up and screamed, because like, that's Dean Winchester. That's the Dean Winchester I love. And then his his just incredible bravery in he insists to Sam again and again, I'm here, I'm not leaving you, even as Lucifer is using Sam's fist to absolutely beat him to a bloody pulp. I mean, and it works. And it works because Sam in there remembers who Dean is and remembers the bond that they have. And that's so Dean saves the day. Sam also saves the day. They do it together. And then afterwards, you see his just absolute anguish as he's just kneeling there in the grass. And, Castiel heals his body, but looking at him, there's no really healing his soul because Sam is gone and he knows where he is. So it sort of ran the whole gamut of Dean Winchester and why he is such an incredible character.
Okay. And I'm going to go for a much lighter one after that and say Dog Dean Afternoon. Dean uses a kind of questionable spell to interrogate animals and ends up being able to talk to animals and kind of starts going a little native in terms of hanging out with the animals. And he starts yelling at a pigeon. And Sam at first is very confused, but they've got the witness, which is a German Shepherd, with them. And, Dean's riding in the Impala with his head hanging out the window. And, he really does. Jensen has a terrific comedic ability for as well as he can do drama and angst and the real tearjerker stuff. He can also do the funny stuff so well. And, Dog Dean Afternoon just works because he makes it work and he makes you believe that he can talk to animals. Not even like Cass interrogating the cat. Dean actually has the real deal. So it's just a fun episode, and Jensen knocks it out of the park. Anne?
Well, I'm gonna go with well, let me think here. I'm gonna go with Frontierland because Dean loves dressing up and he's all about the West. And then when they get there, it's more Germy than I thought it would be. And then he also, there's a Blazing Saddles reference. There's a Die Hard reference. There are just, again, as you said, Gail, Jensen has a gift for comedy. And when they first get there and Sam steps in the horse manure and he says, "You know what that is, Sam?" And Sam goes, "Yes, it's horse." And before he can say the other word, Dean says that's authenticity. And and it's just the timing on that is just so perfect. And then the whole thing about the clothes, where he goes, when they know they're going to go back and try to find Samuel Colt and the Phoenix and get the ashes and everything. And Dean goes on a shopping spree and brings them all these, funny Western outfits. And I think his Cass says, "Why are you wearing a blanket?" And he very seriously goes, "It's a serape."
Straight out of Clint Eastwood movies.
Right. And then of course there's the now famous part where he introduces himself when they get there. He introduces himself as Marshal Clint Eastwood. And then he turns and he says, "And this is Walker, Texas Ranger." So
Prophetic. One of the many times Supernatural ends up being prophetic.
Yeah. So anyway, again, he pulls off the dramatic parts of that as well, and then it just that gift for comedy and just timing. The timing is so good in that episode.
And for anybody who didn't get why that was prophetic, Jared went on to play Walker in the reboot of Walker, Texas Ranger, although that would have been not on anybody's radar at the time. So maybe Chuck really did write them. Elektra?
All right. First Blood in season 12. I love what this showcases about Dean's character, where this is Sam and Dean they have killed the devil, and they have been, unfortunately, the devil was the president at the time, and they're caught by the Secret Service, and they are buried so deep in a black site that no one can find them, including, Castiel and Mary, and this is pretty serious stuff. And they're locked in isolation, and they're pretty desperate, and you get to see a lot about their character and what they'll do. And when they do get out and they have to deal with soldiers, what this shows about Dean and the fact that he will knock out guys, but he doesn't want to kill them because they're just doing their job. And his explanation that don't come after us, we are your worst nightmare. And it's two of them against like a whole bunch of guys. And he's like, just don't even, like, we're your worst nightmare.
We're not
And
trapped out here with you. You're
We're
trapped out.
trapped. Yeah. And they're in a forest. It's just, he's so convincing. It's, yeah, you should believe this. Don't mess with these guys. And he carries it off. And I like the acting, and I like what it shows about the character of Dean. After 12 years of these guys, I believed him.
Yeah, yeah. Carol?
It's there's so many to choose from because Jensen does do both the dramatic so well and the comedic. And then you have the choices. Do you want to talk about an episode that demonstrates Dean's character and it tells us something about him? Or do you just want to pick something because Jensen just did it so damn good,
Well, pick one fast, and then you'll get to do another one.
I'm gonna go with Hollywood Babylon, which is just fun. It's a monster of the week. It's a fun episode. Uh, there's a lot of tongue-in-cheek stuff and references to filming in Hollywood and shows that the boys were on prior to Supernatural and all of this stuff. But what's really funny is that someone early on mistakes Dean for being a PA, or in other words, someone who runs all the errands. Um, Dean loves it. He just loves it. He throws himself into being a great PA, and he's hurting people, and he's talking into his little like walkie-talkie mic, and he's found the craft table, and oh my gosh, they have mini taquitos to die for. And the star of the terrible horror movie turns out to be the star of these other terrible horror movies that he's loved. And dang if he doesn't get lucky with her, and she's really happy when they get out of her trailer later. And he just has so much fun with it. Sam's like pursuing the monster of the week case, but Dean is just like rocking and rolling and having a great old time, and he's really almost kind of sad to leave. And then the crowning moment, of course, is when the two of them are walking away into the glorious sunset. Of course, it turns out to be an enormous painted flat that's getting rolled out of the way. So, but just watching Dean have so much fun in what you would think would be a really alien, milieu for him. And yet he's such a little chameleon sometimes, and he just soaks it all up and does everything. And it's just so fun to watch.
Okay. Lynn?
I'm gonna switch gears and go with Soul Survivor in season 10, which is when Dean is Demon Dean. Such a fabulous, fabulous episode, directed by Jensen, I think just brilliantly. There's so much that's just good about it as an episode. But I think it's really interesting because unlike most of the demons who we see in the show, it's not some other former soul possessing just a meat suit. It's Dean. It's Dean being Demon Dean. So there's parts of it that are Dean, and he has, the memories of Dean and the awareness of being Dean, which makes him even more fascinating. And he's it lets us see how dangerous Dean Winchester could be if he wasn't anchored by his moral code, and he didn't have, Sam to anchor him and what he had been taught. If he was just sort of left on his own. He is absolutely terrifying. And Jensen did such a brilliant job, stalking through those hallways, and he's chasing Sam because he is Dean. So even though he doesn't want to team up with Sam, he ostensibly wants to kill Sam, but he's still obsessed with Sam. So he's, cat and mousing Sam through the bunker. And there's a point where, and I'm sure Jensen added this because it's typical Jensen, where you see Demon Dean like sniff the air to see if he can catch Sam's scent. He's just so feral and so evil. And then there's that moment when they do come together and Dean's got the hammer and he swings at Sam's head, and it's so perfectly choreographed. Sam ducks just in time and then comes up with the knife to Demon Dean's throat. And he is just 1,000,000% the cockiest. Dean is cocky. It's like amplified to 1,000,000, and he's just like, do it, daring his brother to do it, and knowing, because he is Dean, knowing that Sam is not going to be able to do it. I thought it was pretty amazing that the chemistry between Jared and Jensen was still 100% there, even though they were not on the same side and they were literally at each other's throats, which bodes well for other shows that they're going to be in, even if they might happen to be enemies. And then at the end, after when Dean is Dean again, he's immediately worried that he's done irreparable damage to his relationship with Sam. He asks Castiel, does Sam want a divorce? And Cass kind of wisely says, it's going to take a lot more than you trying to kill Sam with a hammer to make him walk away, which is a perfect way, in Cass's inimitable way, of kind of summing up what their actual relationship is.
Well, I'm going to go with something that demonstrates the polar opposite, which again shows Jensen's range, and that's yellow fever. The boys are looking into deaths where people were apparently frightened to death. And Dean gets infected with the virus, and he is terrified of everything. So we have seen Dean Winchester be the guy that demons are afraid of, the guy who can, wipe out vampires. And there is one classic scene where he opens a locker and a cat jumps out. And I don't know how Jensen had a voice left after doing that scream. It is so piercing and high pitched, and not what you expect to hear from Dean Winchester. And it just goes on forever, and he totally freaks out. And so Sam is trying to keep Dean from dying, because not only would Dean die, but then this is his hell year, so then he'd go to hell early. And just watching the two of them together, of course, the chemistry is always there, but just watching Jensen play the comedic side of a Dean Winchester who isn't stoic and brave, and does eventually, of course, get healed. But boy, do we get to see a completely different side of Dean, and Jensen knocks it out of the park.
And in the end, you've got that extra song where he sits on the eye of the tiger.
Yeah, we get the outtake of Jensen doing Eye of the Tiger, which is amazing in and of itself. And that's before we really knew how well he could sing. So back to you, Ann.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Citizen Fang, because I really love the relationship between Benny and Dean. And again, it shows his loyalty, and it's the culmination. That episode is a culmination of what we see in flashbacks in several other episodes, and of when Dean was in purgatory and he teamed up with Benny, and the two of them fought their way back to reality, I guess you'd say. And he is so loyal to Benny, and he wants Benny to succeed, even though it's hard, because Benny is a vampire, but he is not he's not taking human life. And it just, I just really enjoyed seeing him have a relationship as close as that with somebody other than Sam. And it just echoes his loyalty, his perseverance in trying to help Benny. And I just really thought that the two of them together made a really good team as far as a interesting, because Benny is very, very different from Sam. And he's he's got Dean has good relationships with like Bobby and other characters, but there was something special about that relationship between Benny and Dean. And I thought that both of the actors really made that work in such an amazing way.
Okay, Elektra.
As long as we're talking about vampires, live free or try hard. Dean does a lot of great things in this episode. He points out all of the issues with Twilight. So whoever wrote this episode, thank you. Thank you, Dean, for pointing all of those things out and agreeing with me wholeheartedly about just how creepy Twilight really is. And also the whole bit about pointing out, really, a guy wearing Twitter on his face, that's just not, that's okay, sure. Do the girls like it? Really? Okay. We get to see Dean being bitten and on his way to being a vampire. And then of course he would go back to see Lisa, that this is the season he's with Lisa. And he tries to say goodbye to her and can't handle the closeness. And he plays that so very well. To her, he can't handle dealing with Ben. And it breaks your heart watching that. It's done so well, and again showing how much range there is with both Dean and with Jensen, the two sides of the coin. We get to see the whole Dean going after the nest and understanding a lot about the vamps and starting to realize that there's something going on with Sam, all the while dealing with all of this, realizing that Sam's not quite right. And that's the beginning of him trying to figure out what's going on with his brother while dealing with being a vamp. So, killer episode. Gail, you're muted.
Sorry, my dog was squeaking something.
Aw.
Squeaky. Carole?
So I'm going to go with an episode that's very Dean-centric, but doesn't have a lot of Jensen in it. And that is The Curious Case of Dean Winchester. Sam and Dean and Bobby are all dealing with a witch who plays cards for years. An interesting character himself that many people, including myself, wished we could have seen more of, because Patrick the Witch was really, really interesting, and he meshed just great with them. But what happens to Dean is that he's playing to regain the years for Bobby that Bobby lost playing. Well, except he loses as well. So Dean ages like 35 years. And the actor who portrays this older Dean is Chad Everett, which women of a certain generation will recall as the hot young doctor in an early medical series. He was very handsome and dashing and all this stuff. Well, he's a silver fox is what he is. So he's still handsome and dashing. And he portrays Dean just so, I mean, there's all of Dean's bravado and winking at the women who are just like, oh, you're just like my grandpa, and eating cheeseburgers and then wondering if he's dying because he has acid reflux. So Dean being Dean, yet running into all the various issues of being an older person is hilarious. It's just hilarious. He does a really great job. In the end, of course, he is Sam wins the game after everyone's been telling him he's not going to win the game. He wins and gets everybody's years are back, and Dean is the right age again and stuff. But watching cranky, grumpy Dean, as portrayed by Chad Everett, will never cease to have a warm spot. I have a warm spot for that in my heart. It's funny, it's heartwarming, and it's just delicious. Delicious.
Okay, Lynn?
I'm going to go all the way back to season 1 and Dead in the Water, which is one of the earliest episodes where we really start to get to know Dean better, not just the kind of outside persona that Dean puts on, but the real Dean. And the episode itself like shows all of those facets contained within an episode, which is pretty amazing. So in the beginning, you see sort of the persona that he has, the flirty Dean. He's flirting with the waitress and saying to Sam, you know, we're allowed to have fun sometimes. That's fun over there. And sort of presenting himself as the hedonist that he can be. He flirts with Lucas, the little boy's mom. But then we quickly see that that is really not all there is to Dean, that he's not just this smooth operator who doesn't care about people, because he connects with Lucas, the little traumatized boy, very quickly. And we see that he kind of instinctively knows how to do that. He gets down on Lucas's level. He knows how to talk to him, how to make eye contact with him. He knows how to essentially do some play therapy with him, like with my therapist hat on. This is such a well done episode because Dean is essentially doing a little play therapy with Lucas. They're doing some art, you're drawing their families, they're playing with the little army men, which is how kids work through trauma. And Dean totally 100% gets it. And he almost looks like a different person when he's interacting with Lucas than the Dean that we've seen so far. And the episode is brilliantly written and brilliantly filmed. Kim Manners, I'm pretty sure, was directing it, so no wonder it was brilliant. But there's a whole scene of Dean interacting with Lucas that Sam is overhearing and watching from the doorway. So Dean doesn't know that Sam is listening. So we, the audience, are seeing what Sam is seeing, and Sam's reaction is our reaction of like, whoa, this is my brother. We find out that, Dean also experienced trauma when his mother was killed, obviously, and we find out that he didn't want to talk after that either. So he was also selectively mute for a while. And then he tries to kind of share the way he got through it with Lucas, saying, I knew my mom wanted me to be brave. I try to think about that and be brave every day. It's just absolutely heartbreaking and heartwarming at the same time. Sam is really moved by this and tries to connect with Dean, that more vulnerable part of Dean afterwards. And he can't really do it. Like he can't be vulnerable with Sam. He says, oh God, we're not going to have to hug now or something, are we? Like he has to push it away. But I even love that because it gives us 15 years of character development to build on till we get to the finale. And I think back on that early episode and how Dean couldn't go there at the time. But I love that episode. And Jensen, as always, knocked it out of the park with that, showing us Dean's vulnerability.
That has one of the most gorgeous moments where when Dean has dived into the lake to rescue Lucas, and the lake is still and the lake is still and the lake is still, and then they break the water and Lucas is coming out and Dean's coming out, and they filmed it like just enough slow-mo, not so much that you're like, oh my God, they're hamming it up, but oh, it's gorgeous. It's just a real little cinematic masterpiece in those 10 seconds or whatever. That's stunning.
For sure.
LARP and the Real Girl. This is Dean, this is Charlie, this is live action role playing. But it turns out that Charlie is very involved with this LARPing group where she is the Queen of Woundor. And unfortunately, some LARPers have turned up dead. So Sam and Dean offer to help. Of course, they have to go in costume. So we get to see Sam and Dean in medieval costume. And then, they solve the mystery, they catch the bad guys, but then they participate in the big battle at the end. And if you've ever seen LARPers at a Renaissance festival or some other kind of event, this is pretty epic. And we so rarely got to see Dean just have fun. And once the bad guys are out of the way and they've solved the problem, even more than Sam, Dean is just a little kid in this warrior costume who gets to go out on the battlefield and thump people on the head with a fake weapon. And the glee that you can see, you're so happy that every now and then Dean gets to be happy. And he is really embracing this and really having a great time. So it's just a fun episode, as Charlie tells him, if this tent is rocking, don't come a knocking. So we got a nice Charlie fix as well. Back to you, Ian.
Well, there's so many good ones to choose from again, but I'm going to go with the Benders because it's really a terrifying episode to me. And I think that, Sam gets kidnapped and Dean is frantic. And it's an early season. It's the 15, it's season 1, episode 15. And we get to really, we know that, Dean is always taking care of Sam and that kind of thing, but this is just Dean being frantically trying to find Sam and figure out what happened. And he gets crossed up with the lady sheriff who, as it turns out, was going through the same thing with her brother who went missing. And it's got one of my favorite Dean lines of all time. Demons I get, people are crazy. And it's just when he's searching through the Bender's house and seeing and figuring out what they've done, because they have Polaroids of all these people that they've used as that they hunt. They kidnap them, then they turn them loose in the woods and hunt them down, and that's a different kind of a hunter, as we're learning about. But it's just again, Jensen shows a side of Dean that we can really relate to, his franticness about trying to find Sam and the way he really cares about what happened to the sheriff's brother too. And so it's just another one of those great performances by Jensen.
Okay, Elektra?
I'm going to take us to near the end, to Last Call, where Dean follows a case to Swayze's bar and meets up with Lee Webb, an old friend and former hunter, and is having kind of a good old time trying to solve this case until he discovers maybe all is not well in the bar. But we get to see Dean meeting with an old friend, having a drink, going up on stage and singing a song that reminds him of Dad and good times back when, Dad was still alive. And it's really kind of a heartwarming episode until it takes, a turn to the south. And he discovers that maybe Lee took the easy way out. And it's kind of a great episode, mostly because Jensen and Christian Kane are great together. The chemistry between them is fantastic as fellow hunters. And even when they end up with an epic fight, it's a great fight to see.
It is. It really was a great fight scene.
And everybody needs a good barroom brawl.
Yeah.
They really do. And it's a great Dean episode. There's other stuff going on in other places with Sam, but the Dean parts of that episode are fun.
You're muted, Gail.
He's
You
squeaking.
keep doing that.
I know, he's squeaking. How about you, Carol?
All Hell Breaks Loose Part 2, the season finale of season 2. Uh, the part 1 of All Hell Breaks Loose is very Sam-centric. It's very much about Sam and the other children that Azazel has been fostering in a way. But in the second half, Sam has been killed, dies in Dean's arms, and there is a scene that is just so incredibly well done where Sam is lying there dead and Dean has this whole speech about he's reviling himself that he didn't keep his word, he didn't do his job. His job was to protect Sam, and obviously he didn't do that because now Sam's dead. And there's guilt, there's love, there's like kind of screaming into the void, why is this happening and why does this have to happen to us? And um uh Dean's heartbreak is so palpable, and the agony that he's going through because his brother is lying there dead and it's all his fault. you know um it's really a stunning scene. Elsewhere in the episode we have great moments where he then goes to the Crossroads Demon and makes his famous deal that for uh, one more year of Dean's life, he will then go to hell so that Sammy can keep living. Sammy can come back and have a full life. Uh, the the scene where he's dickering with the devil, he's trying to push her, but she knows she's got all the cards, and it's like they go back and forth, 15 years, 10 years, 5 years, 1, and he takes it. He takes it. So that's got laden with so much angst and emotion. And then in the end, he kills the yellow-eyed demon, the boogeyman that has haunted his family since he was 4 years old. He kills him. He gets to close that whole threat and mythology from his father that has been hanging over his head his entire life. Has been, we're going to get that demon, and by God, he gets it. He gets it. And even though he gets it, he has that moment of like, I did it. We did it. He's done, he's gone. And yet realizes that, what? It was a drop in a bucket. I mean, it was a pretty big drop. It was a puddle-sized drop, but it's a drop in the bucket, and there's still much more, work out there to be done and other things to be dealt with. And they dealt with this super duper demon, but it doesn't mean there's not going to be more out there. So much. He goes through so much in this episode, but he gets his Sammy back. They both get to see their dad one last time. Their dad is freed from hell and presumably ascends in a shower of golden sparks, ascends to heaven. So many things go on, and at every moment we are there with Dean. We are feeling what he's feeling, his grief, um his his emotions that are so strong, and we feel it every single bit with him. So there is the double thing again where we're learning, it's so much about what drives Dean. The love for his brother, we got to kill the demon, and how Jensen brings us into that so easily and so readily, so that we're on the edge of our seats. Our throats are like, what is going to happen? And it's really spectacular.
Okay, Lynn?
Well, I will bring us back to some lighthearted things since I did mostly not lighthearted things. Season 11's Beyond the Mat. As the seasons went on, we got fewer and fewer glimpses of Dean as like that happy-go-lucky side of himself. And as a person who just is very passionate about the things that he likes and those hedonistic tendencies, and also of Dean as fanboy, which is one of my favorite flavors of Dean. And I love that the show gave us that Dean is a fanboy, because it's kind of a meta message to fans too, that hey, the main character is also a very passionate fan himself, which is validating for fans. But I like Beyond the Mat especially because it's Sam and Dean sharing a passion together. We often see like one of them is into something, Dean is maybe really into something, and Sam is sort of rolling his eyes a little bit or whatever. But in this, they are both fanboys, and we get to see them doing this thing together and just being like little kids together. And we don't get a flashback, but we get a glimpse of that this was something that they shared as children. You know, we know they became incredibly close, so you know there have to be lots of things that they share, that they found even in the midst of the way they were being raised, moments of joy that they could share, which is part of their really strong bond. And we get to hear that this was one of them, and they're both so joyous to be able to do it again. And they're both, at this point in season 11, they're both very gentle with each other. So Sam is very indulgent of Dean getting totally carried away as a fanboy. Dean is very indulgent, sort of gently teasing Sam about his boyhood crush and the poster that he had above his bed. It's all really kind of sweet between the two of them, which is really nice. And we also get, again, anything Jensen ad libs or adds to is always going to be some of my favorite stuff. When Dean goes back to the ring and thinks he's all alone and climbs into the ring and is just completely letting go and rolling around like an absolute goofball before he gets caught, is just, Jensen is so good at that physical comedy, and he makes that a part of Dean, and I loved getting to see that lightheartedness from him.
Well, I'm going to wrap us up with Time After Time. And this is where Dean gets zapped into the 1920s by the god of time as he and Sam are chasing down, trying to figure out who's leaving these mummified bodies behind. And Dean ends up in the 1920s, roaring 20s in Chicago with Eliot Ness. And so again, Dean is a fanboy. Dean just is excited. He knows who Eliot Ness is. He watched, the show on TV. And so Dean gets recruited to work with Ness turns out Ness is a monster hunter. And so they go after the monster in their time. And we get to see Dean all tricked out in a really snappy suit and the slicked hair, and the older woman who is kind of the Bobby of that situation, who just, she's part mother and part cougar, and just the way she deals with Dean, and how excited he is to be working with Eliot Ness. And meanwhile, Sam's in the background with Jody trying to get him back, to our time. But Dean's having a good old time hunting monsters with Eliot Ness. And again, it's just so much fun to see him have that fanboy aspect, and he looked pretty damn good in those suits. Well, folks, we are really coming up on being out of our time, so let's do a quick round where we tell everybody where you can find us online. Anne?
Well, you can find me mostly on Facebook and Blue Sky now, and it's Ann Wicker, and pretty much look for the profile picture with the bracelets, and also you can find me in the I always get these initials wrong. T Free Will NC.
Yes.
Group on Facebook, and here at Continual on a few panels here and there.
Here and there. Elektra?
My website is untilmidnight.com. You can find most everything there. I do most of my social media on Mastodon, where I'm Elektra at wandering.shop. Look for us under #WriteFant, Mondays from 7 to 8, where everybody's welcome to join in, where we answer 4 questions on a random topic. And we're launching a book Memorial Day weekend at Balticon, new stories from Jack Chalker's Well World called Permutations.
Very good. And Carol.
You can find me on Facebook, especially in the Continual Facebook group and the TFWNC Facebook group. As Ellis Colton, all of my social media links are at www.elliscolton.carrd.co, and that has all my links: Instagram, Amazon, Blue Sky, TikTok, etc. My books are available on Amazon and wide at Smashwords, especially my first in my paranormal series, The Case of Thistledown House, and its upcoming sequel in April, The Malevolent Sea.
Okay, Lynn.
You can find me on all social media at FangasmSPN. You can find the books that I've written with the cast of Supernatural and my other books on Supernatural anywhere you like to buy your books. And you can find any information on all of them at my website, fangasmthebook.com.
And I'm pretty easy to find online, gailzmartin.com, morganbryce.com. If you spell those right, you'll find me on pretty much all the major social media. My books, as both Gail and Morgan, are available wide, so you can get them wherever books are sold. Well, folks, thank you so much for being here tonight. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There will be more Supernatural coming up soon, so we'll see you online.